Hi, this is Apryl Stott, and we're going to be doing an art project that we put together for Nevada Reading Week 2017, a charcoal wildlife drawing based on this beautiful photograph with permission from the photographer. And the supplies we're using are just regular masking tape, which we're using to put a border before we start. I like to stick the masking tape to my pants a couple times, and that takes some of the stickiness off, and that makes it easier to remove at the end. I usually have the students tape off their own artwork. It's good practice and less prep. After the tape's on, I do press down a couple times around the edges just to make sure it's really stuck on there. The other supplies we're using are compressed charcoal, vine charcoal, regular chalk like chalkboard chalk, and a gummy eraser. And this paper was from Nasco, which is a fairly common educational supplier on the West Coast. It was 12 by 18 inches, and I trimmed it down to 9 by 11. Before we start, I like to make some observations. One observation that I make is that rhinos are kind of weird looking. So if your drawing is kind of weird looking, then you're spot on perfect. His head in this picture is huge, and it's kind of like an oval shape, and it comes over from almost the middle up to the corner. The next biggest shape is this horn, which is kind of a curved up triangle, and then this guy. And then we get into the details like the eyes and the nose. So the first thing we're going to worry about is the biggest shape, because we want to make sure we have room for everything on our paper. So I'm going to take my finger and kind of plan. I want the head to go, I think, about right here. And I want to leave room so he's not kissing the bottom of the picture. So I'm going to start with my vine charcoal, which makes an easier to remove line, and it's not quite as dark. And we're going to start with a little tiny whispery line. I'm not going to be too picky. I'm not worried about making a perfect oval. I'm just sketching a shape right here. It's kind of a big fat head. And then the next shape we're going to do is the triangle horn right here. And look at how there's like this much space. Look at the positive and the negative space. The positive space is the rhino. The negative space is the background, this nice dramatic black background. So if I look at the positive and the negative space, it gives me a little bit of clues of where to put this horn. Look at what a mess that is. It's totally fine. This is the sketchy first part of your drawing. It doesn't have to be perfect. And remember, a whispering line. This is a screaming line, like that right there. It's really hard to erase, but a whispering line like this, I can erase just with my finger. It's awesome. Okay, so now I'm going to do the next shape right here, which is his next horn. Half the time should be spent looking at your reference material and half the time looking at your drawing. Don't be too picky with your drawing right now. We're going to put his eye in, and obviously his eye is not that big. His eye's kind of like a little upside down triangle that's inside this circle here. And then his nose goes right in between the eye and the horn. See that? If you draw a line straight down, his nose is right there. And it's also like a triangle, and it's underneath the horn here. So always look at the relationships between the shapes when you're drawing from a photograph. Of course, if you're drawing your own creation, it's okay to be scribbly and do whatever you want, be free. But just for today, we're just drawing from a photograph, so we're going to be a little tighter. I think I made his nose too high, so it's a good thing I did little light sketchy lines, because now I can change that. And there's still room for him to have a little black at the bottom, so perfect. Okay, so this is the skeleton of the drawing. We've got a basic idea of where we're going to put things. Don't mind my cat, she just sneezed. Oh my gosh, bless you, kitty. So I'm going to start adding in some wrinkle shapes, because the wrinkle shapes kind of define the shape of the rhino. Look at how this isn't just a straight line right here. See how it kind of curves right there and then curves down a little bit. And then these ones are kind of curving this way. This curves around the shape of his eye. These lines curve up and around. Every line that we put down here is going to do a little job and help add structure to our drawing. Make it look three-dimensional. It's kind of a bone up there. Just putting my reference material where I can see it really well. Okay, clearly this is not perfect at all. So I'm not worried about making it perfect. Just worried about having fun. So this right here is the compressed charcoal, and we're going to start putting some of this dramatic black background in. And for most of the background we can scribble, but for right up against the edge of the rhino, I want you to do a really clean, solid line. It's charcoal, so it's not going to be perfect, but look at that is a nice solid line right there. It's very satisfying. I'm using kind of the big fat side of the charcoal to do that. It's doing double duty because it's making a nice line at the edge of our rhino. It's also filling in some of this black. I noticed on this paper, working with this paper, one side of it, when you put the black charcoal on, it looks a lot darker. This side almost looks a little bit gray. I don't care about that. But if you have students using this kind of paper, and some of them have super dark black, and some of them have gray, that's why one side of the paper works. Has more tooth in it or something. Tooth is the texture of the paper that holds the charcoal. Look at, I smudged, but that's okay. That's a little oops, and I'm not worried about it. So down for this part, you can just scribble. After I said not to have your rhino kiss the bottom, mine is totally kissing the bottom. But that's okay. This is just fun. Okay, now look at how dramatic that already looks, just by putting that black in. And now we're going to kind of cheat, because we have these dirty fingers right here. We're going to use them to kind of pull in some shading onto our rhino. If you look at the photo, the bottom of the rhino's head is really dark. There's not a lot of light here. So we're going to pull a lot of charcoal in it, but we also want to make sure that we keep a line of where he ends and the background begins. So pull, and don't just pull up, pull into like a shape. Use this as a tool, use your finger as a tool to kind of define the roundness of his head. Okay, now we're going to start to add some wrinkles. I'm going to use the vine charcoal because I feel like you can get a better line with it, because we don't want our wrinkles to be super fat. These wrinkles are pretty delicate. These are pretty thin lines here. And I'm not going to worry about copying the photo exactly, because this is a drawing, not a photograph. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm just going to try and capture the feel of it, not worry about making it perfect. I'm going to add some texture right here. I think this part is kind of fun because it's almost like scribbling on top of your drawing. And see how my wrinkles are going in all different directions, but still kind of defining the roundness of the rhino's head. If your rhino looks really weird, like I said, you're doing a great job, because rhinos are weird looking in their own beautiful way. I'm going to take the compressed charcoal and I'm going to fill in his eye right here. I love his soulful eye in the photo. I think that's part of why I picked this photo, because it had such great texture and the dramatic background and his eye. So we have a lot of charcoal on our drawing now. You can take your finger, your dirty finger that you've been smudging with, and kind of use it to just punch up your shadows a little bit, just blend them in a little bit. It's kind of a balance between leaving lines and making shadows. I feel like my background needs to be popped up a little bit. So I'm going to take my compressed charcoal. Color in here. These little dots are from the texture of the paper. So I can try and scrub them out, cover them with charcoal, but I'm not super worried about it. Notice it, the shadow kind of comes in right here, so I'm going to put a little extra there. Remember to be kind to yourself as you draw. If you're really critical, it's hard to have fun, first off, and this is just for fun. But it's also hard to do good work when you're thinking mean thoughts to yourself. And it kind of takes all the joy out of it. Okay, I'm going to just add a few more lines and wrinkles. Just make some observations about what you see. They're all going to look different. This is your individual drawing. I'm using some short sketchy lines and some long lines. Again, I'm not trying to copy every single wrinkle, just kind of get the idea of what's there. There, that looks pretty good. One last thing is I notice it's almost like a web of wrinkles around his nose, or her nose. I want to add more craggy crags down there. Technical term. Okay, so this part that we're doing next is super fun. we're going to take and add some highlights. Because we have a mid-toned paper that's not white or black, it's kind of a brownish. Now we can add some of these white pops right here. And just like when we did the wrinkles, we're going to kind of emphasize the shape of the rhino's head as we add the white. I feel like right here, these spots are the brightest spots on the rhino. And then there's some, you know, that's pretty bright too, but then there's a little bit of highlight that we can add down here. But one thing my class that I volunteered to teach art in was used to me saying all the time is less is more. Oh, I forgot the super exciting part. This is a gummy eraser. Before you pull them out in your classroom, if you use them, have a talk about expectations. Because today we are not making sculptures from our gummy erasers, even though that is so tempting. And they are so fun to, oh, that's just so fun to do that. This is how you clean a gummy eraser. So before you start, you can do that. We're not building any snowman or robots today. Okay, so I'm going to take the gummy eraser. And if I see any spots that look a little bit too dark, I can kind of press. And that's magic, isn't it? It just pulls it right up. You don't have to scrub it like this. Just press your gummy eraser down. Less is more. We don't want to take too much of all that beautiful work we just did off. Okay, now for the fun part. Well, that was pretty fun, but this is fun too. The rhino horn, rather than just coloring it in white, I want it to have texture. So I'm doing kind of a mix of short little lines. I'm not just coloring it solid. I want it to have that pattern. I'm also, this is just my preference, I'm not going to take my finger and smudge this part because he is not super smooth. He looks like, you know, super wrinkly. And if we smudge it, it'll look kind of plasticky, in my humble opinion. We want to show wrinkles. We don't want to show perfect, smooth, solid white. So I'm just kind of scribbling, scrabble right here. So less is more, just like I tell the class. Don't get crazy, but also have fun. Just don't cover all this work that you did with white. I'm going to give a little extra special attention around the eye. Like I said, I just love that eye. He looks like a kind rhino to me. I know that's kind of ridiculous, but I like him. See, every line that I'm putting, I'm not worried about making it perfect first, but I'm using that line kind of show the shape. And then when it gets up here, I'm just going to do like a couple little speckles like that. In different directions, you know. It's wrinkly skin, so it's not like a perfect pattern. Not covering the whole thing yet. I'm going to do this horn. I'm going to start by making long lines like this. But I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom because I want to show that the bottom is in shadow. And I want that line right there to be really crisp. And then now that I have those lines down, I'm going to kind of go like this just to make it look more three-dimensional. Just a little bit. Again, I'm not smudging the chalk with my finger because I like that kind of rough texture there. Okay. There's a little bit down here. Okay, now remember we talked about how the brightest was at the top and then it's just a little bit down here around his nose. So I'm going to kind of do it in different directions. Make a more craggy, wrinkly face down here. Sorry, I tend to travel all around my drawings when I work on them, not just work on one spot. Not too much, because this is really shadowy down here. And this, it has like intersecting lines right here. Okay, we are almost done. This is the time where you want to look and see, is there anything that really bothers you or you feel is a little bit off? I feel like even though I'm glad I did, those lines down there, they're a little bit too bright. So I'm going to come over them and smudge them a little bit. Not too much, because I want to leave that there. I feel like that. Since the light is coming from the top of the rhino, it's definitely a lot lighter up here. Okay, the last step we're going to do. Sorry, I got too excited about that. I'm going to add just a tiny bit. He has this almost like a little eyelash right there. I know it's not, it's just a line in his. I feel like the eye is the focal point, so I want to make sure I get that right. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is we want this background to really, really pop and be black. So I'm going to come and just make sure that I've defined my shapes of the horn right here. Oops. So that's really clean looking. Okay, so it doesn't look exactly like the photo, but it's a drawing, so it's not supposed to. And it's my drawing, so it looks like the way I made it. Just like yours looks the way you made yours. So now that we've got the basis of our drawing done, you can tap, tap, tap off to the side of your desk, tap off the extra charcoal, and then gently peel the tape off. If your tape is sticking, you can put a little heat, a hairdryer on it, and that'll help the adhesive let go. Probably wash your hands before you do this part, just in case you have smudges on your hands. I like to live dangerously, so I didn't. And then at the end, because charcoal is hard to do a fine line in, I usually have the students write their name with pencil very calmly and smallly in the corner, and you can put a date on it. And that is it. I hope you have fun with this lesson, and just leave a comment if you have any questions. Thanks.